Hello and welcome to the final Artist Lounge of our live from London Spring Festival with this evening's guest performers, Fagiolini. Tamsin, would you consider yourself a member of the group now?
I will never be a little bean. Never, never. I'm an interloper.
Well, look, guys, what an incredible programme. You've definitely earned your tipple this evening, so congratulations to you all. I'm going to start by asking you, honestly, when was the first time as an ensemble that you turned over the front page of those new commissions?
As an ensemble?
As an ensemble.
A week ago.
A week ago.
It was last Friday.
Last Friday.
Crikey. So really quite an achievement to put that together. Or is it an achievement? Is that, have you found it challenging to do? It certainly sounds, in a good way, challenging when you sing the pieces.
You know, when I put the rehearsal schedule together, we have this luxury of having a friends organisation that gives us some money that allows us to do a bit more rehearsal than we were doing a few years ago. And I didn't know what the pieces were going to be like, of course, 5 new commissions. And so I just didn't know how much we needed. And I put down more than we might normally have. And I think when the commissions came through, it wasn't so much this is going to be very difficult. But goodness me, we've needed that time just to mature in them. Because until Gregory talked about this, how we try to sing the whole piece in this group and not just the noise it makes. And it really needed to settle, didn't it? It's like making coffee or wine or something. And Joanna's piece that we've just ended with, we couldn't have felt that a week ago, even if we understood the harmony.
The relative luxury of having that time is then clear for when you don't have that time. You wonder where you can get, on other occasions.
And so by contrast, Tamsin, I imagine the T.S. Eliot's not something you read regularly. So talk to us a little bit about your preparation for that.
Well, I did study it at school, so I knew the text. I mean, I did some more reading around it over the past few weeks, and listened actually to T.S. Eliot reading it, which was quite dull and quite funny. It was really brilliant hearing. Often you get poets reading their stuff and you think, "Oh, blimey, I'm really glad you write." But it was, his sort of April is the cruelest month, breathing dead lilacs out.
Banger's our sponsorship for the TSA.
It was so interesting.
That leads me to my next question, because one of the things that fascinated me was all of the languages you had to speak in, all of the sort of characters that you played. Are those in your arsenal already, or are those things that you have to specifically be like, okay, I'm going to create some new sounds for this?
Well, I think he's got such an ear for character. He hears the language and the music of each of those people, because they are people that he's writing down. He's not just writing down his own poetry. He's really hearing the cadence of those characters. So I think it's just really just cluing into what he's heard and captured, and just going along with that. Even sort of the cadence of the woman in the pub who's talking about her friend. It's all in there. You sort of don't have to create it. You just have to. It's a surrender, isn't it? That moment of daring to surrender to it.
That's it, isn't it? So then for the singers, I know as a singer myself, I was sitting there listening thinking, oh gosh, well I could probably go quite a lot further most of the time than when I sing. So was it impacting on you and your performances, hearing this incredible declamatory style with all the character in it?
Yeah.
Good. Right answer, Fred. Thank you.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because you can look at the poetry involved, and then the way someone sets that, it's so much in the composer's hands, I think. And that was one of the big discussions we had, especially with Joanna's work. It's not that every word is set with its own meaning, but what Robert was saying is that so we get sort of lost in the details of, well, do we need to bring out squawk, and we do need to bring out the owl and all this. And then you just start to get to know the piece, and you start to run it. And then it has its own sort of arch, and through that does, I think, the poetry become clear, hopefully.
But it is very much a process,
Yeah.
and this is when we go back to the time. Greg and I were sort of coming from, in some ways, opposite ways, weren't we? And I was trying to get into the text because I think that's something you have to do first. But in the end, you have to step back. And Joanna was quite clear on this, and that what was the words she said? You have to trust. Other words about the process. That it was almost like a sort of hymn. You have to come back and respect it.
Well, I think also it really comes back to what Tamsin said about surrender. And I think that's where, working with all you lovely people, it is all about trust and surrender, that you become part of a bigger thing. It's not just about your part, so hopefully you know it pretty well. But if you sort of surrender yourself to the music and to the text, it doesn't kind of sing itself, obviously, but there is that inevitable momentum, which is it's just amazing to do this sort of repertoire.
I think that was nice about this particular project as well, was the relationship between the text and the music, and the fact that, like for us, we had this great bit in the Joanna Marsh piece at the end where the two sops just soar above everything else, and you can, when you're doing that, you can see the canal that you've just narrated and the whole landscape that you'd described in that last passage, and they just kind of fit together so beautifully. It was such a joy to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, really special.
And I mean, one of the things that struck me about the programme from the singer's perspective was the coming together of old and new. And now, I know that most people here could write their voice part down on a piece of paper and it wouldn't fit a piece of Renaissance polyphony. I look at specifically at four of you, really. So, but then when you're singing the contemporary commissions, presumably they're writing much more in the standard as we know it today, SATB. So is there a challenge for you guys going between the old and new? Are you just cool with it these days? How does it work? Is it tiring?
I didn't do any.
I think that the freedom that having single voices allows makes it easier than it would otherwise be, actually.
Yeah, you had that great solo, didn't you? Exploring all the different ranges of your voice. That's a big highlight for me. Especially being an alto, I was sitting there thinking, I could never do that.
But
I'm interrupting.
There is this dichotomy that people, I think you're referring to, that you see a piece of Victoria and immediately you have these connotations, and Greg and I have talked about this a lot. Okay, how do we sing this? You sing it the same as you sing anything else.
You sing it exactly the same. When Victoria wrote it, it was really new.
Yeah.
Right? And the whole point of singing any music is that whatever music's in front of you has to be new and relevant. I hate that word, it's loaded. But I do kind of mean that it is emotionally relevant to the people who are listening to it right now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether that's written last week or 400 years ago.
I think it's important because people watching and people talking about this music, and you watch YouTube comments and things, that they are all absolutely clear that early music sounded like a certain thing. We haven't got a bleeding clue what early music. The only things we really know about how they sang in the 16th century was that enunciation mattered enormously. That's the one thing that people talk about, and that they didn't have a word for vibrato. They had other words, but I mean, if you watch Ilan Rotem's 15-minute programme on this, he's looked at all the research, and he said balance, probability, is that if you're going to say there was a thing, then there was vibrato. But why does it have to be one way? The idea that you would do the same, the Victoria in Madrid, that you would do the same way as Bird in London, there's no one style, and every group has to recreate, and this programme is about recreation. And I think, certainly for students watching, you mustn't think that there is a way to do something. You have to find a way. The way Tamsin's read it tonight, other actors would have done it in a different way, but you have to make it something for you, but you have to keep listening. That's the thing, you have to listen to what you're doing. Does it work? There's no point saying, I want to do this gold lame hanging from a chandelier. Okay, but does that suit the music? So always respect the music and try to find out what's in it naturally.
And respond to the sounds going on around you. I was certainly guilty of starting to tie myself in a bit of an early music, not on the top line of those Victorian ones. And the note I wrote to myself at the top of the piece was just sing it, listen to what the others are doing and just do it.
I'm relatively new to Fag, and I must say one of the great joys it's been is this treatment of text wherever it's from. If it's in Latin, you know, behold and see. It's not Latin, that's a translation. But the point is, that's what's important. That's where the expression is as much as the notes. And actually, from a singer's point of view, that's really liberating, because you're not sort of trying to make some sound. You're just declaiming the text, because it's very meaningful and powerful stuff.
So, I'm sure many people out there sing in conducted choirs. One of the things that's noticeable about this evening is, of course, there's not a lot of visual direction going on, and a lot of the threads that you guys are tugging are about your responsibilities to sing in this ensemble. So, put them in plain words. What are the things that when you walk in here that you're doing differently to when you're singing in a section, in a choir where there are sections and a director?
Can't remember.
Communication.
Yeah.
Definitely just the freedom to be able to communicate as yourself, but to interact with others in a way that you can't necessarily do when it is a bigger group. Is a great pleasure for me.
Responsibility, taking responsibility for everything, but importantly taking responsibility for mundane things like the tempo, like you're not reacting, you're anticipating, and I don't necessarily think that conducted choirs need to have singers in them who react to the conductor, but that appears to be the way that it goes. But that in particular is what I also love in this, in that the rhythm is something that's with you, that's in you, that you have, and it's not being shown to you. You don't have to figure out what's going on. You have it, and everybody else happens to have it as well.
There's something that I get, given that I'm not conducting, but I also conduct choirs, in that we're all individuals. And that's what people want to see when they come. They don't just want to see, well, you can have a group that sounds exactly the same top to bottom, but still has its individuality, I suppose. But you want to see people's personalities coming through the music, but still them coming through the music. And I don't think we want to suppress that. And different people have different ways of doing it. But I think drawing people's personality and finding, everyone has something different to bring to this. And I'll stop now, actually.
I love supporting my colleagues. That's the thing that I get the greatest pleasure out of. Because in my other life as a pianist, nowadays most of the stuff I'm doing is accompanying. And I just love being able to interact. And for me, it's all about listening and interacting, and not just taking your own line for granted, but also having an awareness of what's going on around you as well.
It was very interesting watching you perform. I was very surprised at how communicative you are with one another. I find that really, really intriguing. That really drew me in. That wow, these guys are actually talking to each other. There's something going on.
And breathing together.
You're breathing,
There's nothing more wonderful than that intake of breath. You catch someone's eye across the way and you sing.
And you have a smile on your face at the time.
And you just smile.
And then there are certain moments as well when you see just certain people connecting at the same time because you know that something is happening in the music. And I think that's reflected a little bit in what Elliot is doing, because so many of the words are quotations from other works and allusions to other stories, that he was just listening to all the other artists who've gone before, who have laid down these treasures. And he's just, when he says, these fragments I have shored against my ruins, he's just picking up the fragments and treasuring them. And that's the conversation that's going on, and it seems to be mirrored in what you're doing, that you're each treasuring what the other one is bringing. It really sat
It's a
well.
lovely thing about, I was going to ask you actually how it felt being in the room again with live music.
Oh my goodness, there are times I just had to stop listening because I just thought I was just going to cry all the time. I just haven't, I was able to make the film of Romeo and Juliet before Christmas, so, we haven't been in the room, but to hear music and artists creating in the space, doing something that I simply couldn't do, was just so, it's so moving.
Hey, Tamsin, who's your favourite singer?
Well, it's interesting because you were talking.
Who is your favourite actor?
You were talking before the show about surrendering yourself to the moment, but not losing the discipline of going beyond a certain line emotionally, because then you effectively can't do the job. Did you come close? Did you have to work hard?
Yeah. Just at the end there, you know, there's those fragments of, and then that line, I should at least set my lands in order. You know, that idea of, you know, if you have a sense of who may be speaking that, when time is so short, you know, we don't have long to set our lands in order. And that was very resonant, very present.
Fantastic. Well, what struck me about today was the imagination behind the whole concept, firstly, but also the fact that so much of it was new for today, and within that, for me, it brought a new life to the music that I knew really, really well. And I think a huge part of that is what we've spoken about. It's just so nice to see you guys communicate, and the personality that you bring to your music. I really hope that, I'm sure that translates through the lens, and we're hugely grateful to you all for coming and closing our festival in such style. And Robert, a lot of it's your imagination, and I hope that your imagination will continue to turn, because I'm sure that we'll be seeing you live from London again very soon. But for today, thank you very much to you all for coming.
Can I just ask, who's going to sit there then?
That's the third person, ahead.
That's your
Who
imagination.
is that walking beside you?
But thank you very much to you all, and of course thank you to everybody through there for supporting our festival.
Yeah.
And we will see you all again very soon. From Live from London, very good.
Cheers.
Cheers.